Captain Elias Carter had seen his fair share of bad jobs, but this one was supposed to be easy. A simple rescue mission, in and out, no complications. The client had promised a hefty payment, enough to repair his ship, buy new weapons, and maybe even take a break from mercenary work for a while. But now, as he crouched behind a metal crate inside a heavily guarded alien fortress, Elias had a bad feeling. Blaster fires streaked through the air, lighting up the dim corridor in flashes of red and blue. His crew, a small but loyal team of misfits, were pinned down behind a makeshift barricade, returning fire at the heavily armored guards blocking their escape route. This was supposed to be easy. His pilot, Rax, shouted as he ducked another laser blast. Elias ignored him and tapped the hololock on the prison door in front of him. The small device blinked red, still decrypting. Hurry up, he muttered under his breath. The client had been very specific. Rescue the VIP from cell 42. Get them out, and bring them to a safe location. No questions asked. The payment was too good to refuse. With a final beep, the door slid open, revealing a dimly lit chamber. A tall figure stood in the center, restrained by glowing energy cuffs. Even in the low light, Elias could tell the prisoner wasn't human. She had shimmering violet skin, long silver hair that seemed to glow faintly, and piercing golden eyes that locked onto him with sharp intelligence. She was breathtakingly beautiful, but Elias had no time to admire alien royalty. "Come on, princess, time to go," he said. The woman tilted her head, studying him. Then, in a smooth, commanding voice, she asked, "Are you the one who has come to claim me?" Elias blinked. That was an odd way to ask for help. "I'm the one getting you out of here," he corrected. She didn't move. "Then it is done. The bond is sealed." Elias frowned. What? Before he could ask what she meant, explosions rocked the fortress. The guards outside were shouting, and his crew was screaming at him through his comm. "Elias, we don't have time for flirting. Move it." Shaking his head, he grabbed the woman's wrist and pulled her forward. She followed without resistance, her movements graceful despite the heavy shackles on her wrists. The escape was a blur of gunfire, explosions, and close calls. Elias's team fought their way back to the docking bay, where their ship, the Starfire, was waiting. The moment they stepped inside, the ramp closed, and Rax blasted them out of there, dodging incoming fire from the fortress's defenses. Only when they were safely in hyperspace did Elias allow himself to take a deep breath. He turned to their mysterious passenger. "All right, Your Highness, you're safe now. Mind telling me who exactly you are?" The woman stepped forward, her golden eyes glowing faintly. She straightened her posture, looking every bit the royalty she was. "I am Princess Varelia of the Zarkath Empire," she said. "And by the sacred laws of my people, because you have rescued me, you are now my betrothed." The room fell into stunned silence. Elias stared at her. His crew stared at her. Even Rax, who had been busy at the controls, turned around with a look of disbelief. "What?" Elias finally said. Varelia clasped her hands together, looking pleased. "You have saved my life. In Zarkath culture, this is the highest form of devotion. A bond has been made, and you must honor it." Elias ran a hand down his face. "Oh no. No. That's not how this works." Varelia frowned slightly. "It is our way. You cannot refuse. If you do, it would bring dishonor to my family and my empire. That is not acceptable." Elias took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Look, princess, I was just hired to get you out of there. No one said anything about marriage." Varelia raised an eyebrow. "You accepted the task, did you not?" "Yeah, for money. Not for this." Elias gestured wildly. Before the conversation could go any further, the ship's alarm blared loudly. Rax swore. Boss. We got incoming ships. Big ones." Elias turned to the monitor and felt his stomach drop. A massive fleet of sleek, golden warships had appeared on the radar, blocking their path. "They're Zarketh royal vessels," Varelia said calmly. "They must be here for our wedding announcement." Elias groaned loudly. "Rescuing you was a mistake." Varelia simply smiled. "No, Captain Carter. It was destiny." Elias Carter gripped the edge of the control panel as alarms blared through the starfire. The radar was lighting up with dozens of royal warships, all marked with the emblem of the Zarketh Empire. "Ah, boss." Rax, his pilot, sounded nervous. "We've got a very big problem." Elias didn't need to be told twice. The Zarketh fleet wasn't just here for a casual chat. These were war-class vessels, fully armed and ready for battle. He turned to Princess Varelia, who stood perfectly calm, as if this were a normal day for her. "All right, Princess," Elias said, forcing himself to stay calm. "You want to tell me why an entire fleet is after us?" Varelia gave a graceful nod. "They are here to escort us back to my homeworld. As my chosen mate, you will be welcomed as a hero and properly celebrated." Elias blinked. "Chosen what?" Varelia tilted her head, her silver hair shimmering under the ship's dim lights. "You saved me. That means you have claimed my life, and by Zarkath law, that means you are now my betrothed." Elias groaned. No, no, no. I didn't sign up for this. I was hired to get you out, not to marry you." Varelia raised an elegant eyebrow. "In my culture, there is no difference." Elias threw his hands in the air. This had to be a joke, a bad dream, something. But the fleet outside was very, very real. Before he could argue further, the ship's holocom activated. The image of a tall, armored Zarkath general appeared, his golden eyes flashing with authority. "Princess Varelia," the general spoke with a booming voice, "we have arrived to bring you home. Your bondmate will be honored in a royal ceremony." Elias gritted his teeth. "I'm not her bondmate." The general ignored him completely, speaking only to Varelia. "Your Majesty, please command the human to lower his ship's shields, so we may bring you both aboard." Elias spun around. "Varelia, tell them I'm not marrying you." Varelia simply smiled. "I cannot do that. It would bring dishonor to my family, and to you." Elias stared at her. "I don't care about honor. I just want to live." Varelia placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Do not fear. The ceremony will be beautiful. You will be showered with gifts, treasures, and endless luxuries." Elias groaned again. "I don't want luxuries. I want out." The general cleared his throat. "It seems the human is hesitant. No matter. We will bring him peacefully." Elias's eyes widened. "Oh, I don't like the sound of that." Suddenly, the fleet's ships began to charge their tractor beams. Bright golden energy crackled in space, ready to lock onto the starfire. "Rax!" Elias shouted. "Already on it, boss." Rax yanked the controls, and the starfire dove straight down, narrowly avoiding the first tractor beam. The ship's engines roared as it spiraled through enemy fire, dodging blaster shots from the massive warships. "They're trying to disable our engines," Rax yelled. "Not happening," Elias growled. He slammed a fist onto the ship's manual override, diverting all power to the thrusters. The starfire shot forward like a comet, darting between the towering battleships. The Zarketh fleet pursued at full speed, their cannons firing relentlessly. Elias grabbed the comm. "Varelia, tell them to stop shooting at us." Varelia, who had been calmly watching the chase, finally sighed. "Very well." She activated her own royal comm link, speaking in a firm voice. "General, cease fire immediately. My bondmate, and I wish to, enjoy a private journey before the ceremony." The general hesitated. "But, Your Majesty." "That is an order." Varelia's voice was absolute. For a moment, there was silence. Then, the warships powered down their weapons. Elias exhaled in relief, until Varelia turned to him with a knowing smile. "There," she said sweetly. We have time now. But you cannot run forever, Captain Carter. Elias gritted his teeth. We'll see about that. He spun back toward Rax. Plot a course far, far away from here. Anywhere they won't follow. Rax smirked. Got it, boss. As the Starfire jumped into hyperspace, Elias could feel Varelia's golden eyes on him, calm and patient. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Elias Carter sat in the Starfire's cockpit, rubbing his temples. This was not how his life was supposed to go. 1 minute, he was a mercenary for hire, taking simple jobs to survive. The next, he was engaged to an alien princess and running from an entire empire. This was a disaster. Rax, his gray-skinned alien pilot, whistled as he checked the ship's scanners. Boss, I gotta say, you sure know how to pick your jobs. Elias shot him a glare. Not helping. Varelia, the cause of all his problems, stood nearby, looking completely at ease. Her long silver hair shimmered in the dim light, and her golden eyes studied the cockpit with quiet amusement. You should rest, Captain, she said calmly. You will need your energy for our future together. Elias groaned. For the last time, we are not getting married. Varelia blinked, tilting her head. You keep saying that as if it changes the reality of our bond. Elias clenched his fists. I don't care about your traditions. I'm not a Zarkath. I'm human. Varelia smiled softly. Ah, but humans honor their commitments, do they not? You accepted the mission to save me, and now you must fulfill its true purpose. Elias stared at her. The purpose was getting you out, not putting a ring on my finger. Before Varelia could reply, the ship's alarm blared loudly. Rax cursed, scanning the monitors. Oh great. Looks like we got company. Elias leaned over the console. His stomach sank. 3 ships had locked onto them, but they weren't Zarkath royal vessels. These were mercenary hunters. Let me guess, Elias muttered. There's a bounty on my head now. Rax whistled again. You're gonna love this, boss. 50,000 credits, dead or alive. Elias turned to Varelia. Seriously. Varelia sighed. I had hoped my people would be patient, but it seems they wish to motivate you. Motivate me. They just told every bounty hunter in the galaxy to kill me. Varelia nodded. It is quite an effective method. Elias ran a hand through his hair. You're insane. The bounty hunters didn't wait for a conversation. The first ship opened fire, sending a barrage of plasma bolts at the Starfire. Rax, get us out of here, Elias shouted. Already on it. Rax yanked the controls, sending the Starfire into a sharp dive. The ship twisted and rolled, narrowly avoiding another round of laser fire. Elias grabbed the comm. Listen up, you trigger-happy lunatics. This is a huge misunderstanding. The lead bounty hunter's voice crackled through the speakers. Nothing personal, Carter. 50,000 credits is a lot of money. Elias gritted his teeth. Yeah. Well, good luck spending it if I blast you into dust. He slammed the weapons controls, firing the Starfire's rear cannons. The plasma blasts hit their mark, crippling one of the bounty hunter's engines. The second ship, however, was faster. It swooped down, locking onto the Starfire with a tractor beam. Elias felt the ship shudder. They were being dragged in. Not good, Rax muttered. Not good at all. Elias turned to Varelia. You got any royal tricks to get us out of this? Varelia smiled. Yes. She raised her hand and pressed a small device on her wrist. A sudden pulse of energy shot out, disrupting the tractor beam and sending a shockwave through space. The bounty hunter ship spun out of control, alarms flashing as their systems overloaded. Elias's jaw dropped. What was that? Varelia smirked. A simple defensive pulse, designed to disable technology. I did not use it earlier because I wished to see if you were capable of handling yourself. Elias blinked. You were testing me. Varelia nodded. And I am pleased. You are strong and clever. You will make a fine consort. Elias groaned loudly. I am not your consort. Virelia just smiled. The Starfire sped away from the disabled bounty hunters, escaping into hyperspace once again. For now, they were safe, but Elias knew this wasn't over. The Zarketh Empire wouldn't stop. The bounty hunters wouldn't stop. And worst of all, Virelia wasn't giving up either. Elias leaned against the wall, exhausted. This is a nightmare. Virelia approached him, her golden eyes shining. No, Captain Carter. This is destiny. Elias groaned again. Elias Carter sat in the cockpit of the Starfire, staring at the blinking lights on the control panel. The ship was running smoothly, but his life, not so much. In the past 24 hours, he had rescued an alien princess, found out she considered him her future husband, escaped an entire fleet of warships, got a bounty on his head big enough to make every mercenary in the galaxy chase him. And worst of all, the princess in question, Virelia, was currently humming happily behind him, as if everything was completely normal. Rax, his pilot, leaned over and whispered, Boss, you really gotta do something about this. You think I don't know that? Elias hissed back. I'm trying. Not hard enough, Rax muttered. She's still here, and you're still engaged. Elias groaned. Don't remind me. Virelia turned towards them with a soft smile. Is there something troubling you, Captain? Elias forced a smile. Nope, everything's just great. Virelia nodded. Good, then we should begin discussing the wedding preparations. Elias nearly choked on his own breath. The what? Virelia clasped her hands together. The wedding. It must be grand. A union between a Zarketh princess and a human warrior is rare. The entire empire will celebrate. Elias shook his head violently. No, no weddings. I told you, I'm not marrying you. Virelia sighed, as if he were a child refusing to eat his vegetables. You are being stubborn, Captain. I call it having a choice, Elias shot back. Virelia tilted her head. But you made your choice when you rescued me. That was a job. In my culture, it was an act of devotion. Elias groaned. This is impossible. Before Virelia could say anything else, the ship's warning alarms suddenly blared. Rax checked the scanners. His face turned pale. Boss. We got incoming. Elias turned to the screen. His stomach dropped. 2 Zarketh royal warships had just exited hyperspace, heading straight for them. How do they keep finding us? Elias shouted. Virelia looked amused. I may have left a tracking signal active in my royal crest. Elias slowly turned to face her. His eye twitched. You what? Virelia smiled. You kept running, Captain. I simply ensured that my people would retrieve us when necessary. Elias dragged a hand down his face. Unbelievable. The comm system crackled, and a deep voice came through. Captain Carter, this is Commander Dareth of the Zarketh Royal Guard. Lower your shields and prepare to be boarded. Elias took a deep breath. He was officially out of patience. Listen up, buddy, Elias said into the comm. I am not going with you. I am not marrying the princess. And I am definitely not letting you arrest me. Commander Dareth's voice remained calm. Refusal is not an option, Captain. Elias turned to Rax. Weapons. Rax shook his head. Those ships are way out of our league, boss. If we fight, we're toast. Elias looked at Virelia. Tell them to back off. Virelia gave him a sweet smile. Why would I do that? They are here for our wedding preparations. Elias clenched his fists. I am not marrying you. Virelia sighed. Captain, you are making this more difficult than it needs to be. Elias spun around. Rax, get us out of here. Now. Rax didn't argue. He slammed the controls, and the Starfire twisted sharply, blasting away at full speed. The royal warships immediately gave chase, their engines burning hot. They're gaining on us, Rax shouted. Elias growled. Time for Plan B. Do we have a Plan B? Rax asked. Not really, Elias admitted. But then an idea hit him. A stupid, crazy idea. He turned to Virelia. All right, princess. You want me to marry you? Virelia nodded. Yes. Elias smirked. Fine. But I have one condition. Virelia's eyes sparkled. Name it. You have to prove you can handle life outside the palace. No royal guards. No servants. Just you, me, and survival. Virelia blinked. You wish to test me. Elias folded his arms. Exactly. If you can keep up with me, I'll consider the wedding. Virelia studied him carefully. Then she smiled. Very well, Captain. I accept your challenge. Elias nodded. Good. Rax, find us a deserted planet. We're going off-grid. Rax grinned. Now this. I like. The Starfire veered sharply, disappearing into hyperspace before the royal ships could react. For the first time, Elias felt like he had the upper hand. But as he glanced at Virelia, who looked calm and confident, he had a sinking feeling. She was going to play this game better than he expected. The Starfire dropped out of hyperspace, hovering above a desolate planet. The surface below was a vast expanse of rocky terrain, with deep canyons and towering cliffs. No cities. No people. Perfect. Elias Carter smirked as he leaned back in the captain's chair. Welcome to Corvex 9, Princess. No royal palaces, no servants, no guards. Just survival. Virelia studied the planet from the viewport, her golden eyes shimmering with curiosity. It looks peaceful. Rax snorted. It's a wasteland. This place is crawling with sandstorms and energy-draining creatures. You'll be lucky to last a day. Elias grinned. Exactly. If the princess wants to prove herself, this is the place to do it. Virelia turned to Elias with a confident smile. Then let us begin. Elias raised an eyebrow. You're really going through with this? Virelia nodded. You set the challenge, Captain. I accepted it. Elias sighed. All right. Rax, prep the survival gear. We're landing. A few minutes later, the Starfire touched down on the dusty surface of Corvex 9. The air outside was thin but breathable. The temperature was hot, but not unbearable. Elias, Rax, and Virelia stepped onto the rocky ground, the wind whipping against them. Elias crossed his arms. All right, Princess. Lesson 1 of survival. Find shelter. Out here, you either stay out of the sun, or you become fried toast. Virelia glanced around, scanning the jagged cliffs and deep ravines. Then, without hesitation, she started walking. Elias blinked. Where are you going? Virelia didn't stop. To find shelter, of course. Rax nudged Elias. Boss, she might actually take this seriously. Elias frowned. We'll see. They followed Virelia as she moved across the rocky terrain with graceful precision. She was surprisingly fast, stepping over unstable ground without hesitation. After about 10 minutes, she suddenly stopped. There, she said, pointing toward a narrow cave entrance built into the side of a cliff. That will provide adequate shelter from the heat and wind. Elias raised an eyebrow. Lucky guess. Virelia smiled. I studied planetary survival tactics as part of my royal training. Elias groaned. Of course you did. Rax chuckled. I think she's winning, boss. Elias shook his head. Not yet. They moved inside the cave. It was cool and dry, with enough space to store supplies. It was, in fact, a perfect shelter. Elias grumbled to himself. He had expected Virelia to complain or struggle. Instead, she was making this look easy. All right, Elias said, tossing down a bag of supplies. Lesson 2, food and water. We need to find some before nightfall. Virelia nodded. Agreed. Before Elias could say anything else, Varelia reached into her belt and pulled out a small silver device. With a press of a button, it emitted a low-frequency scan, spreading across the ground. A second later, the device beeped. "There is a water source approximately 2 kilometers east," she announced. Elias stared at her. "Are you kidding me?" Varelia looked amused. "Survival is not about brute strength, Captain. It is about using the right tools." Elias groaned again. "This is cheating." Varelia raised an eyebrow. "Did you not say I had to survive? You never said how." Rax laughed. "She got you there, boss." Elias sighed. "Fine. Let's go get the water." 2 hours later, Elias wiped sweat from his brow as he hauled a container of fresh water back to the cave. The small underground spring had been a lifesaver, and Varelia's scanner had led them right to it. By the time they returned, the sun was starting to set, casting an orange glow over the canyon. Elias dropped the container with a thud. "All right, princess. One last lesson. Building a fire. Let's see if you can do that without a royal gadget." Varelia smiled. "Very well." She knelt near the cave entrance and began collecting dry twigs and stones. Then, to Elias's surprise, she used a traditional fire-starting method, rubbing stones together to create sparks. After a few tries, a small flame flickered to life. Elias stared in disbelief. "How?" Varelia sat back, her expression calm. "Fire-making is one of the oldest skills in the universe, Captain. Even a princess must know it." Elias shook his head. "Unbelievable." Rax smirked. "Face it, boss. She's doing better than you expected." Elias grumbled under his breath. This was supposed to be his advantage, his way to prove that Varelia couldn't handle life outside her royal palace. Instead, she was adapting like a professional. As the fire crackled, Varelia sat beside Elias, her golden eyes glowing in the dim light. "Have I proven myself yet?" she asked softly. Elias looked away, annoyed but impressed. "You're better than I expected, but this doesn't mean I'm marrying you." Varelia simply smiled. "We shall see." Elias groaned. As the night deepened, he had a sinking feeling that this challenge had backfired on him completely. Elias Carter sat near the small fire, staring at the dancing flames. The night was quiet, except for the occasional howl of some distant creature. The air was cool, and the rocky cave provided good shelter. Everything was going well. Too well. Varelia sat across from him, looking calm and confident, as if she had lived in the wilds all her life. Elias rubbed his forehead. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. She was supposed to struggle, to realize she wasn't cut out for survival. Instead, she had adapted faster than him. Rax sat nearby, chewing on a ration bar. "So, boss, what's the plan now?" Elias sighed. "I don't know." Rax smirked. "Admit it, she's winning." Elias glared at him. "She's not winning." Varelia tilted her head. "Then have I passed your test?" Elias hesitated. "You're doing well." Varelia smiled. "That is good to hear." Elias crossed his arms. "But that doesn't mean I'm marrying you." Varelia leaned forward. "You are very stubborn, Captain Carter." Elias groaned. "And you're too persistent." Varelia chuckled. "That is how a princess must be." Elias didn't respond. His mind was racing, trying to find a way out of this insane situation. Suddenly, the ship's emergency beacon started blinking. Rax stood up. "Oh, boss. We got company." Elias grabbed his scanner and checked the readings. His stomach sank. A Zarketh warship had just entered orbit. "They found us," Elias muttered. Varelia looked at the scanner and nodded. "That is my father's ship." Elias turned to her. "What?" She smiled. "I told you, Captain. I left a tracking signal active. My father was always going to find us." Elias shot to his feet. "You set me up." Varelia shook her head. "No, Captain. I only ensured that our time here was limited." Elias clenched his fists. Unbelievable. Rax whistled. Boss, I gotta say, she played this game better than you. Elias ignored him. He turned to Virelia. You planned this from the start, didn't you? Virelia's golden eyes sparkled. I told you, Captain. I always get what I want. Elias groaned. This is a disaster. The warship's communication system activated, and a deep voice echoed through the cave. Princess Virelia, we have located you. Prepare for retrieval. Elias sighed. Looks like this little adventure is over. Virelia stood up gracefully. Yes, but it was quite enlightening. Elias folded his arms. So what now? You drag me back to your palace and force me into a wedding. Virelia's smile was mysterious. No, Captain. I have a better plan. Elias raised an eyebrow. What kind of plan? Virelia stepped closer. You saved me, Captain. That means you are now connected to my people. Instead of being my husband, you could be my ally. Elias frowned. Ally? Virelia nodded. My father is a powerful emperor. He could reward you with riches, ships, and influence, or you could refuse and continue running. Elias hesitated. He didn't like being trapped, but this offer sounded tempting. Rax nudged him. Boss, this might be the smartest way out. Elias sighed. Fine. I'll meet your father. Virelia smiled. Wise choice, Captain. As the warship shuttle descended, Elias had a strange feeling. This was far from over. Elias Carter stood stiffly in the grand throne room of the Zarketh Empire's flagship. The room was massive, with towering golden pillars and a ceiling so high it disappeared into the shadows. The air smelled of incense and metal, a mix of tradition and war. At the far end of the hall, Emperor Scifi, ruler of the Zarketh Empire and father of Princess Virelia, sat on a massive throne of obsidian and steel. His golden eyes, the same as his daughter's, studied Elias carefully. You are the human who rescued my daughter, Scifi said, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. Elias swallowed but kept his expression neutral. Yeah, that's me. The emperor leaned forward. And yet, despite this act of bravery, you refused to marry her. Elias sighed. Your Highness, I saved her because it was the right thing to do. Not because I expected a reward, and definitely not because I wanted to be forced into marriage. Virelia, standing beside her father, smirked. He is very stubborn. Scifi raised an eyebrow. So I see. The room was dead silent. Every royal guard, advisor, and court noble watched Elias with interest, waiting for the emperor's decision. Then, Scifi did something unexpected. He laughed. A deep, booming laugh that filled the chamber. Elias blinked in confusion. Did I miss something? The emperor chuckled. You are a bold man, Captain Carter. Many would have begged for the honor of marrying my daughter. But you argue against it, even in the face of power. Elias shrugged. I don't believe in doing things just because I'm told to. Scifi nodded. A rare quality. He turned to Virelia. And you, my daughter, do you still wish to marry this man? Virelia was silent for a moment. Then she smiled. No, father. Not yet. Elias let out a breath of relief. Finally, some sense. Virelia continued. I still want him, but I will not force him. Elias sighed. That's better, I guess. Scifi stroked his chin. Captain Carter, I have a proposal for you. Elias tensed. If it involves marriage, Scifi held up a hand. No, something else. The emperor stood, his massive frame towering over Elias. You have proven yourself to be brave, resourceful, and stubborn. I need people like you in my empire. Elias raised an eyebrow. Are you offering me a job? Scifi nodded. Become an official ally of the Zarketh Empire. With my power and resources, you will never have to run again. You will have wealth, protection, and opportunities beyond imagination. Elias hesitated. The offer was tempting. No more running. No more hiding. He could finally have a real place in the galaxy. But at what cost? Elias glanced at Varelia, who watched him with expectant eyes. He then looked at Rax, who was trying hard to hide a smirk. After a long silence, Elias made his decision. "I'll work with you," he said carefully, "but I won't be anyone's servant." Sephor smiled. A wise answer. Varelia stepped forward. "And perhaps in time, you may choose to stay for more than just work." Elias sighed. "You really don't give up, do you?" Virelia's smile widened. "Not when I see something worth chasing." Sephor clapped his hands. "Then it is settled. You, Elias Carter, are now an official ally of the Zarketh Empire. May this be the beginning of a great partnership." Elias still wasn't sure if he had just won or lost, but one thing was certain. His life had just become a whole lot more interesting. The end.